hope you'll like Miss Wells. Her father's an old friend of mine, lieutenant of detectives in Boston. She graduated from the police academy there, top in her class.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, she's something special, as you'll see when you meet her. That must be her now.
Chris, Kelly, Tiffany Wells.
Should we take this again from the top? I'm Tiffany Wells.
Try me on, I'm very. You try me on, I'm very. You.
And as an American actress, model, producer, and political activist, she is best known as the face of the Revlon's Charlie from the mid-1970s until the early 1980s, and for her role as Tiffany Wells in the fourth season of the Charlie's Angels series, 1979 to 1980. Life magazine called her one of the million-dollar faces in the beauty industry, as she was able to negotiate previously unheard of lucrative and exclusive deals with giant cosmetic companies. One of the handful of 1970s supermodels. In 1978, she was cast as Kate Jackson's replacement on the TV series Charlie's Angels, playing the sophisticated character Tiffany Wells for one season. That's 1979 to 1980. She beat out many of the competition for this role, including Michelle Pfeiffer and Barbara Bach. Although there was an initial rise in the ratings, her debut episode was #1, according to the weekly Nielsen ratings. After that, they began to decline. For the year end, the show dropped from a year-end ranking of number 12 in season 3 to number 20 in season 4, tied with Barney Miller. Responding to the falling ratings, ABC released Hack from her contract in February 1980. A statement later issued by the Spelling Goldman Group read, when she signed her contract for the series, Miss Hack had a personal agreement. She would review her continuation with the show at the end of the first season, and since series television represents an enormous change in her career and lifestyle. Hack said, "They can say that I didn't work out, but that's not true." And on Real Time with Bill Maher, here is Elon Musk vaguely trying to explain what the woke mind virus is.
I mean, you have talked about this woke mind virus.
Yes.
In really apocalyptic terms.
Yeah.
You should explain why you don't think it's hyperbole to say things like it's pushing civilization towards suicide. First of all, what is the woke mind virus? And if we don't deal with this, nothing else can get done. Tell me why you think that.
Yeah, so I think we need to be very cautious about anything that is anti-meritocratic and anything that is that results in the suppression of free speech. So, those are two of the aspects of the woke mind virus that I think are very dangerous. Is that it's often anti-meritocratic. You can't question things. Even the questioning is bad. So, another way to.
I feel like very often wokeness is not building on liberalism. It's the opposite of liberalism. I can mention many examples where it's including free speech.
Free speech is actually is extremely important, and it's bizarre that we've come to this point where, free speech used to be a left or liberal value, and yet we see from the in quotes left a desire to actually censor, and. That seems crazy. I mean, I think we should be extremely concerned about anything that undermines the First Amendment. There's a reason for the First Amendment.
woke mind virus, how did it start? Was it bats? Was it a escape from a lab? I mean, what is your assessment of what? Because it's fairly recent. Why? How did it start and why?
I was trying to figure out where it's coming from. I think it's actually been a long time brewing. In that I think it's been going on for a while. The amount of indoctrination that's happening in schools and universities is, I think, far beyond what parents realize. And I sort of came to realize this somewhat late.
There's a fragrance that's here today, and they call it Charlie. A different fragrance that thinks your way, yeah, they call it Charlie. Kinda young, kinda now, Charlie. Kinda free, kinda wild. Kinda free, kinda wild. Kinda free, kinda wild. Charlie, kinda fragrance that's gonna stay, and it's here now. Charlie.
Charlie by Revlon, a most original fragrance.
Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. My name is Tom Gouker. I am your host. Normally, we chat about music, but right now we are on episode 11. Laurie Greene is an associate professor of anthropology at Stockton University in New Jersey, where she has taught since 1986. She is the founder and chair of the LGBTQ Youth Safe Space Initiative at Stockton University and is an advocate for local LGBTQ community and the author of Drag Queens and Beauty Queens, Contesting Femininity in the World's Playground. We had fun getting to know each other, and it seems like we have shared experiences but different results. Music is by D-Light from the 1990 epic called World Click. Songs are by Bobby Short, and you can binge. You get ahead of the releases. This link is in the show notes, and it's found everywhere. Let's get into it. Okay, what I wanted to talk about is woke a little, and then we'll get into drag queens. Get in that book.
Okay.
Finally, you're like, wait, when was my book? Now you're like, I didn't sign up for this. What is this?
This is fun. Fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Okay, so I need help with this. And I don't know why I'm struggling, because it's just, I'm bombarded with messages. And they did it with Black Lives Matter. They're doing it now with the term being woke, that woke is the enemy. If you actually go online, like, and just say, what is woke or whatever, there is everything that's anti or negative is all coming from like a Republican source. Like it's really like, it's like the end of the world. Like the world's coming to an end. Wokeness is here. It's the problems with being woke. And then I even saw some evangelists like connecting wokeism to the end, like apocalyptic end of the world kind of vibe. And I'm like, oh my God, wokeness.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, and what made me blow my mind is that Elon Musk was on the Bill Maher show, and he was a special guest, and they gave him puff softball questions through the whole thing. It's how great and intelligent, how he's moving the earth to a better place, and he's fantastic. And he said that the biggest thing right now is wokeness. It's the worst thing ever. We got to stamp it out right away. And they said, can you use an example? And he goes, well, if someone says, like, what do you know about George Washington? And the first thing that they say, he's a slave owner, is being mentioned, then that's detrimental to our country. And I was like, everything he was saying, I wish someone dissected everything, because he definitely has an agenda and a message to present. So I thought in my mind, woke. If it comes to like a policy, all policies are, like I always say, it's like an umbrella. You're creating policies to help people and put an umbrella up, and that would cover them. And unfortunately, some people, like that, you just can't get 100% of the people to get the umbrella. And I said, we've been making policies on purpose to exclude people. Like, we know that we're excluding people, and we're cool with that. You know, that umbrella, you know, we know who our people are that we're protecting. I said in wokeness, we're just aware that that umbrella needs to be bigger and wider. And of course, people are going to fall through the cracks, but the people that fell through the cracks before, we're going to invite to get under the umbrella. That's what I consider wokeness. And
Well, you know, this won't be the first time, and it probably won't be the last that people have demonized a term that is used for people that want change. You know, the same thing happened to feminism and liberal and, you know, a whole lot of other terms.
you're right.
And I don't think that woke is any different. I think that people want to frame the idea that you see the mechanisms that of inequality that underlie our society, which is obvious. When you see those mechanisms and you call them out, again, it's seen as divisive, you know, instead of truth telling and, you know, a cry to make things better for everybody. And what I think, you know, where they become convincing is because, you know, people suffer from dogmatic beliefs on both ends of the spectrum. You know, the problem for me personally isn't whether you're on the left or on the right. It's if you ascribe to a dogma, because what dogma does, it's a belief system that cannot be changed. You know, you follow it and there's no convincing you of anything different. And I think on, you know, anybody that has those beliefs, no matter how you frame them, you know, on what side of the political spectrum you frame them in, they're not going to be people that can solve problems. They're not going to be people that can hear somebody else's opinion and come to some resolution or some middle ground. They're not going to be those people, you know. And so, but I think what they do to demonize wokeness is they point to those people, you know, and say, look at that. And we could just as easily point to the other side and say the same thing, right? So it's the inflexibility of thought and the inability to see another person's position that I think is the devil. And, you know, frankly, Elon Musk to me is the poster child for entitlement. Now, I can't believe, you know, a more potentially destructive human being than he is. And he's proving that to be true. You know, he's like a 5-year-old with Twitter. You know, it's like, I'm going to get my way and I'm going to buy Twitter for billions of dollars I don't even have because I didn't like something they said, they you know, to me, and stamp my foot. Or, you know, he's just thinks he literally can do anything he wants. And why people valorize him, I have no idea. I really don't. Because I think he's proven to be a pretty awful person. So, I mean, look, he just launched that SpaceX missile without putting any of the environmental constraints that he was supposed to have on it. And now all over this very pristine and fragile environment are giant chunks of concrete and rebar and all this other garbage, you know, from the remains of the failed flight that blew up that they were all so happy about. I mean, he has a complete disregard for anybody but himself. I think that's way worse than anybody that's woke. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh my God. You know, I wish they would take, like, someone would take his conversation line by line and decode it and say, okay, he's saying this, but this is what he really does. He was talking about, like, everyone has the right for free speech. And I'm like, well, you don't do that on Twitter. You pull people off for their thoughts and feelings, and you definitely troll your whatever ideas that you have. And people, I don't know, like, just the fact that, like, Dogecoin and stuff, like, that's all scam.
He's just a bully. I mean, he's just a bully, you know.
Yeah.
And when you're entitled, you believe you have the right, you know,
Yeah.
to do that. And he's just a spoiled man child, really, who's doing whatever the hell he thinks he wants to do. So, yeah, I mean, again, there's people that really like him. It's a shame because like I would never get a Tesla because I just can't stand him so much. I just wouldn't do it. And I'd love to have a Tesla.
The concept of a Tesla, yeah.
Yeah.
They have a lot. They have a lot of problems. Yeah, Teslas.
Well, that would be because of him then, the problems start surfacing. But his main problem is his ego. And until someone can put that in its proper size box, he's going to continue to, take advantage of all of us for whatever he wants to do with his life.
I don't think people on the street know what woke is. Like if you ask people, what does woke mean to you? They'll be like, oh, it's horrible. It's the worst thing that's happening. But then they were like, well, but what does it mean? Like, what do you think it means?
They'll say the same thing about communism. They don't even know what communism is.
Yeah,
they just know it's bad. They just know it's bad. And, the evil empire, whatever's been put into their heads. But that doesn't mean they can define it. Sometimes when we perjurate something, the meaning of it being bad takes over any other meaning it might have. And again, I think that's what happened with feminism. I will ask my students, how many of you are feminists? Now, up until about 5 years ago, almost nobody would raise their hand. And I'd say, well, why not? What's a feminist? And they'd be, oh, that's somebody that hates men. I'm like, no, it isn't. It's nothing to do with that. Somebody that wants women to have equal rights to men. That's all. That's not what it is. So they're, all they know is they don't want to be saddled with that label because of how negative it is.
Yeah. What
changed a little bit recently, but not much. Still, it's not. It's you don't get a lot of people claiming they're feminists, even if they believe in those things.
See, I found just by observing the Black Lives Matter slogan and the movement, I think just got slammed by this negative trope. Like I don't know. I've never met someone from Antifa. I have no idea who these people are. I don't even know it exists. I basically think they're making it up. Where are these Antifa people?
Well, Antifa isn't like an organized group.
I don't know.
They make it sound like it, but they're not. They're just people that are anti-fascist.
Well, there you go. Well,
but they're not an organized group.
Well, they make it sound like Soros is, running the buggy up front, and all these Antifa people are just murdering the cities and just like.
Well, that's because they have to have a devil. They need an enemy to focus on, to take our attention away from what's really going on, which is the injustice. But instead, you have the enemy, and you blame everything on that enemy, so that what you're doing goes relatively unnoticed. It's like how they said, oh yeah, we saw the people on January 6th. We saw them. Yet they said, oh, it was Antifa. No, I saw them. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't say they're Antifas. I saw them.
Yes.
But they'll say it anyway. And people will believe it because apparently facts don't matter anymore. Dogma matters. When dogma matters, facts don't matter. That's the problem.
Just our conversations, we were talking about, being an activist. I got a book from the library a couple of weeks ago, and it's about the Christian viewpoint of activism. And, they basically said, let's see what it is. Like, you just said something that made me think of it. That being truthful and being honest is the most important thing. And they went back to our government during the Nixon time period, where he obviously did wrong, but they let him get a pass. And the pass, if it seems like if you were higher up, you get a pass, or you can do bad things and get a pass. You're not going to get in trouble for it. Obviously, you can say that 50 million times about Donald Trump, but and now, Clarence Thomas. where it's okay, it's encouraged, and you're protected. And the only way that this book was saying that you can change our society is that you hold people accountable for sins, like they are sinning against God. And when people realize that people of importance or power are actually like held responsible, that's a trickle down theory. He's saying that's a part where you can say, okay, you do bad things, you get in trouble, and you're held accountable. And that then you ask that of everyone around you. People can see that you can get away with anything. Why wouldn't you just say I can get away with anything too?
Well, that is what Trump said, isn't it? Didn't he say I could shoot somebody on Broadway or like in Times Square and nobody would say anything, or my people would still be supporting me? And you're like, that's not anything to brag about, really. But he did, right? He felt that exercise of power was apparently it's attractive to his base.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, it's true. He can do it. Yeah, so he called it out early. He's definitely showed him the Maya Angelou world. He showed himself to be who he was, and somehow we still don't believe it.
There are some people that like it. I mean, I don't get it because I'm so not a fan. But, I mean, there are some people that really admire him. And, I think discounting those people is a mistake. There are people that just feel like at least he speaks the truth. Even if he's got a bad personality or he's not the nicest person or the most moral person, at least he speaks our language and he speaks the truth.
Yeah.
And when people say that, it's so scary.
Yeah. Whenever they keep on saying, well, everyone's corrupt, well, it's just the way it is. Like it doesn't have to be that way. I'm hoping that the word woke stays alive. I think I'm real concerned that just the PR pummeling of this word, makes people really nervous and like they don't want to be a part of moving forward. I'm hoping these young people out there the Gen Zs, just are fed up and they're like, okay, we're going to move this forward if you like it or not. And I hope that they can see what this is, like this downgrading of your own personal opinions or thoughts. And I hope they hang in there. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know. It's hard to know what they're thinking. I think they've got so much to worry about that I'm not sure that they're, I'm not sure. I've often thought about this, because I teach college age students, and I do see that there's a general, I won't call it a lack of interest. I think that they are interested. I just think they feel more helpless or more powerless than I did, so they don't necessarily act upon things. And, that's a shame. That's got to change, or we're not going to have a very nice place to live when they take over this place, But I don't know, because there is a lot to be upset about. So on the other hand, I feel for them. Because,
you can wrap that in. I mean, helplessness is built into the mix of this propaganda that's coming out that's anti-woke. This whole thing where you're like, oh my God, like it's steamrolling you. And we circle back into the jobs when people were losing their jobs and told to work with less people and smile and like it, work more hours and not get paid. That's a level of helplessness too. I mean, I think we've had a good almost 20 years of this now of feeling helpless. I'd say that I think there was optimism during the internet boom, and people were making money and things were creative and stuff. The Clinton years, and ever since then, it's kind of optimism in America has waned, and it's only because of these messages.
Well, I hope that's reversible. I don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope it is. I mean, I get, I can get negative certainly about things. But then, there's always one person that brings my faith back to humanity. There's just, luckily that happens, that there's often an example of somebody that isn't like that, just like a stellar human being. And you can go, okay, faith in humanity temporarily restored. This person seems like a really nice, really good person. Like they're really doing a lot. But, it can be, pretty heavy, right now with all the challenges that we have. And I'm sure a lot of people do this, but I frequently think, like, I'm sure there was a time in history, like for my grandparents, where they felt this, negative about our future. It can't be that new. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it mustn't, I want to think that it's not as bad as I think it is. That we always think that our time is the most challenging one, or, and I do hope that that's the case. I don't know that I'm right about that, but I hope I am. Because
I'd say Civil War was that time period was probably the worst, where people were willing to just kill your neighbor. It's like,
yeah, it's got to be worse than now, right? I mean, there's got to be hope for us, right?
Yeah. Look on the bright side. At least there's not a civil war.
Yeah, not yet, right? But I mean, certainly at times last year it looked like, or a few years ago, it looked like there might be.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's again, you look at what's going on in Ukraine, and it's so sad because nobody ever wins wars. We just blow up a bunch of places, and then it's just like this colossal waste of everything, of lives, of resources, of the environment's destroyed, like everything. And yet people continue to do it. They just continue to wage wars where nobody wins in the end. And that's, a disappointing comment on human beings. And I hope that we don't get to something like that here, where people think they hate each other enough that, we're willing to start, North against the South again, who knows, that we're willing to start fighting again over things. Because it did feel like that, like during the Trump administration, it frequently felt like that to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. It feels like a new wave of it, where they scared the whole America. Now in Maryland, you can get a gun and carry it around with you. So, you have people who are scared out of their mind because of what they see on TV and what they're hearing, and now they are able to carry a gun, concealed weapon. And we're seeing the fruits of what that is. So you're going to have a whole country just packing heat with loaded guns, short tempers, and not ability to be able to navigate, situations, and they just rather shoot their way out of it. That's my fear, and I think that's phase 2 of what was happening before.
Well, I think that's already happening. When you hear about all these, you hear about all these people getting shot for no reason. You walked up to my house, so I felt threatened and I shot you. And it's like, that stuff, that's just scary. Like whenever I'm driving with someone and they start getting a little bit of road rage, I'm like, you better stop it. You don't know who's in that car.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of nuts, like people are angry, and there's a bunch of out of control people. And, I don't think that we should take that lightly. I mean, you just don't know what people are going to do anymore. I hate to say that, but I don't know what they're going to do. At least I don't feel like I know what they're going to do.
I don't want a gun. I mean, I really don't want to carry one, but I'm noticing that people who didn't want one before is now looking at it as like, I have to have a gun. I have to protect myself. But I mean, come on, like, it's just people's ability to communicate with each other is just really disappeared, and now you have a gun. It doesn't. It's scary. We were talking about how crazy it was, when people were walking through Walmart during the stress level that people had during the pandemic. Can you imagine if they all were packing? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I actually thought of that when the pandemic was going on. I thought, yeah, when people start defending their homes from the zombie apocalypse is what it felt like. And if they're going to start walking around shooting people, I did actually think of that.
Sure, or just the fact that you were less than 6 feet away from me, and
Yeah,
you're in my
exactly.
space.
And people were being nuts,
Mhm.
about other people. And it was pretty, it could have happened, is what I'm saying. It definitely could have happened. And I'm glad it didn't, at least in my neck of the woods, it didn't happen, but it certainly could have.
Yeah,
The way that we are armed in this country is so frightening, that people think that that's okay, that we should be armed the way we are. But I honestly don't know what to do about that. I feel like this country is so in love with our guns that I just don't see any way that's going to change, really.
yeah.
I feel like it's getting worse, not better.
I mean, we can't move any legislation to move anything. It's just it is what it is. I always would be sarcastic and say thoughts and prayers and just move away, because I was like, I don't know, there's nothing else I can do. Thoughts and prayers. That's it.
Yeah, and
Rude to say.
yeah, I mean, again, why we want to have all these guns when we've proven that it just makes our society more dangerous, I have no idea. I remember when the pandemic happened, I was in London, and I got stuck there because they closed the city down. So I was teaching all my classes from my friend's flat in London. And I remember telling my students that the policemen in England don't carry guns. And they didn't believe me. And I had to bring my friend Ed, I had to bring him onto my screen, my Zoom screen, so he could say to them, the police don't have guns here. They refused to believe me.
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand how you could possibly have a society where the police didn't have guns. It's just really nuts. But then, we have a thing in the United States of, American exceptionalism, where we just believe that everything that we do is superior. And we just figure nobody can have it better than us, and, they have crime in London and in England, but they don't have people getting shot all over the place. They don't have a school shooting every single day of the year like we do here. I mean, think about that. That's like nuts, right? That we could have a school shooting every single day of the year. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't raised that way. I remember being a kid, and we were talking about in case there's a nuclear war, or we would put your nose against the wall, or you would go under the table. That was scary. That was
because
okay.
that's like a nuclear bomb is going to go through the table, by the way.
But it was scary as a little kid.
Oh God, yeah.
You were in line, and this is the practice, the drill that we were learning. But can you imagine, okay, the kids now, okay, more than likely someone is going to come in and shoot this place up. So this drill is not a drill. This drill is a hypothetical drill. Drill is to save your life. That is potential doom. So I mean, how heavy is that?
It's ridiculous. No kid should have to go to school like that. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that we accept that, but people think the solution's more guns.
Yeah.
I don't understand why, because most people there are people don't know this, but I was listening to this story about this the other day, and it surprised me as well. How many people actually shoot themselves with their own guns by accident every year? It's like this really high number.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And people they get killed with their own weapons because, they drop their gun and it goes off, or, I mean, just like, stuff that you wouldn't, everyday little errors that people make, cleaning their guns or, just not knowing they were loaded or whatever. I mean, and then they're weapons. And the fact that we can't even manage to regulate assault rifles, that's where we're in trouble. Like, we can't even manage to regulate a weapon that is literally meant to kill as many people as it can, as quickly as it can. If I can see people making a case for handguns, but I cannot see people making a case for assault rifles. I just don't see it.
I was watching baseball last night, and they do the people in the stands, and I was looking at, like, I'm counting how many people are on their phone instead of watching the game, and I was like, this is where gun culture is going to be, where they're going to just like casually have their gun, along with their cell phone. It's like they're just holding their gun, they have the cell phone. It's just like it's like people are so preoccupied with this, and you're right. There was a podcast, they were talking about the kids shooting other kids, or kids getting shot by themselves with their guns because they're not properly stored, and no one's like telling people, you got to store these guns. So these kids are getting a hold of them, and they're shooting themselves by mistake. It's scary. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, it's really scary. And again, I mean, they're weapons.
Yeah.
They're not toys. And I don't know, people see it as a hobby, as opposed to it's a gun. It's a deadly weapon, I mean.
I'm saying, like, they're like accessories now to your.
Yes.
Okay, I got my keys, I got my gun, I got my cell phone, I got my lip gloss. It's like it's an accessory. That's why the NRA is winning. You scare people enough, and then that this is your alternative only, and that's where these government officials, or you can tell they're on the take, where this is what they can only come up with. We can't do anything about it. You just need to buy guns. Teachers, you need to buy guns. The answer to this is that more guns.
Yeah, and that, where that's going. That's just never going to work. I mean, it's never going to make anything better. But again, I just don't see that changing in American culture. I really don't. I feel like we're just so enamored with our guns. And it's something that people, I travel a lot, and it's something that people don't understand about us. They'll be like, I don't get why you guys have all these guns. They just, and I'm like, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I can't help you with that. The last thing I want is a gun,
There is no Wild Wild West anymore.
But having said that, I will agree with you. I was surprised to find out that some of my friends have bought guns since the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. And they feel like they need to. And obviously these states have dropped the restrictions. So, you're at one point we're like, can we have more restrictions? And then as in Maryland, they dropped the restrictions. So they did the opposite. I don't know. A lot.
Yeah.
How did you were an artist first, and then you went into anthropology. Now, we want to talk about anthropology a little. I think I know what it is, but it doesn't come up in conversations often.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call myself an artist.
When your degree before you were doing oils and
yeah. I mean, I went to art school. I was an art major in high school. I absolutely loved art. I don't know that I was ever, that good, that I would want to call myself an artist, but I did love it, and I still love doing it. It's funny. I always used to say, like, when people ask me about my career trajectory, I always would say I had academic ADHD. I just really was interested in a lot of things. And, we don't get anthropology in high school, so I didn't even know what that was, right?
Yeah.
But I went to school. I had an art major in high school, which my mom, bless her, best mother on earth, fought for me to be able to do, because it wasn't something that college prep kids did. They had tracks then, and it meant I took 2 art classes, a full hour art class each trimester. And after 2 years, I had these 6 classes, and they gave me an art minor in high school. But it wasn't something that you were supposed to do if you were a college prep person, because, you had to take all your advanced placement whatevers. And I wasn't interested in those advanced placement whatevers so much, but I was really good at science. So when I went to, I went to the academy, and then I went to college after that, and I was a biology major, and I took a physical anthropology course because it was part of the degree. And I just realized, I just fell in love with it, because I realized I could study anything I wanted as long as it had something to do with people, and that to me was like, I don't have to make choices now. I don't have to choose, like, if I want to study this or I want to study that. I can do all of it in this discipline. That's how I saw it, And I went on to get my undergraduate degree in physical anthropology, which is, like biology, human evolution and stuff like that. And then I got my master's degree in cultural anthropology, which is the study of people and cultures, which is mostly what I do now. Is cultural anthropology. And I got my PhD in linguistic anthropology. The only thing I didn't get a degree in was archaeology, which is the only other school of anthropology that I did not get a degree in. And I used to joke, yeah, but I've known a lot of archaeologists intimately, so I've got all 4 fields. But it's just one of those, it's such a broad discipline that it gave me the flexibility and the leeway to be able to study everything I might be interested in. It's a very creative discipline. If I think of it, I can study it, And so when you look at my publications, for example, or just like what I've studied and been interested in, it seems like it doesn't fit together until you understand what I do. So everything I do, I'm an anthropologist of embodiment. So that means I consider the way that bodies have meaning, and how we make meaning as embodied beings that are, embodied cultural beings that live in a culture we share with others. And so my first book, for example, was on how language moves around in people's bodies when they do what's called transnational migration. And that's when people do this like circular migration, like they do in the Caribbeans will come up here, move to New York City, and then they move back home, and they're constantly migrating. And I wanted to know how their language changed, because I studied 3 different communities of Belizeans from the Caribbean nation of Belize in Beach Channel in New York City, in New Orleans, and in LA. And I figured, well, they have these very established communities, so they've got to have their own dialects by now. But what I found was that they didn't. Because they carried their language around in their bodies, and it was always interacting with different groups of people. They failed to create those, what I call boundaries, like set boundaries where language change could take place, where it could deviate. For example, generation is one of those, so young people will start to have their own language that we don't speak, right? Because there is a boundary there amongst generations in our culture. And then, then I have books like on drag, because obviously the way one manipulates their body in drag is very meaningful in terms of comments about gender and sexuality in particular, although it comments about other things. And then, I write about yoga. Obviously, it's a physical embodied practice, and a way of making meaning about the nature of reality, So I could go on, but my point is my stuff seems like it's all over the place, but it is tied together in a way, but this discipline allows me the leeway, to be able to stretch my arms out like that. That's and I think that's why I love it. I just love it. I think I found the perfect discipline for myself, and I'm about to enter a study of narratives in LGBTQ tourism, which I've been looking into, and I have a research site, and it's the same, it's about, they want to bring tourists, they want to bring these bodies into their country, and specifically LGBTQ tourists. And how do they do that? And how are, more and more of these bodies in a place like Malta, which is where I want to study, which is a very conservative Catholic, historically place, how are all these like gay bodies being received? And also because they're visible, they're very visible there. They've set themselves up to be the most LGBTQ friendly place for tourism in the world, by having certain laws, like changing their laws. And also like that narrative that they use to bring people in, like how does that sit with the people that are LGBTQ that are already there, that are Maltese and are accepting these tourists. I think it's interesting to me because I live here in Atlantic City, where we sort of had that once and we're trying to get it back. And I think it could have interesting implications, because tourism stories are always, there's stories that present a cleaned up version of things.
We're at a minute, less than a minute.
Okay.
So I think we can hit the 11:30 one early.
Okay. All right. I'll give it a try. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Episode 11. Let's listen to Bobby Short, live at the Carlisle, Manhattan.
Summer journeys to Niagara and to other places aggravate all our cares. We'll save our fares. I've a cozy little pad in what is known as Old Manhattan. We'll settle down right here in town. We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island too. It's lovely going through the zoo. It's very fancy on old Delancey Street. The subway charms us so, where balmy breezes blow to and fro. And tell me what street compares with Mott Street in July. Sweet push cards gently gliding by. The great big city's a wondrous toy, made for a girl and a boy. We'll turn Manhattan into an it's lovely going through the zoo. We'll go to Coney and eat bologna on a roll. Through Central Park we'll stroll, where that first kiss we stole, soul to soul. We'll have some never spoil the dreams of a boy and girl. We'll turn Manhattan into an isle of. We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx, and Fire Island too. It's lovely going through the
End of episode 11. Next up, episode 12. Hustlers listen to rap. End of episode.